Well, the $44 billion deal, as far as Elon Musk's desire to buy Twitter, has, of course, kept everybody on social media very busy over the last few weeks. There's been a lot of interest around it. But the developments that we've seen over the last couple of days, where there have been a lot of questions that have been raised whether this, in fact, will go through or not, and especially what we heard from Elon Musk yesterday that the deal is temporarily on hold because he has doubts as far as the bots on Twitter are concerned. And then we saw a long thread that came from the Twitter CEO, Parag Agarwal, as well. I want to understand two things today. One, do we actually see the deal going through, or is there scope for renegotiation? And also, more importantly, what is the future that we see as far as the platform is concerned? To discuss all of this and much more, I have with me Manish Maheshwari. He, in fact, is the former CEO at Twitter India, somebody, of course, has a lot of insight at how the platform works. Always a pleasure, Manish, chatting with you. Thank you so much for taking our time and joining us here. First question, let's get that out of the way. There has been a lot of back and forth as far as this entire deal is concerned. But with what we've heard from Elon Musk over the last couple of days, and with how the Twitter stock, in fact, has performed and the kind of beating it's taken, do you think there is scope for renegotiation and that's where it's probably headed now?
Yeah, I think there is certainly a scope for renegotiation. The reason I say that is public markets have corrected. So the day that the deal was signed versus where things are today, at least there's a 20% correction happening. Now, any business person would want to use that as an opportunity to sort of get a better price. And I think Elon would certainly want to do that. Now, there are technicalities there in the sense that the way the deal was signed, Elon gave up the right to due diligence. And at the same time, Twitter also made some representation and warranties. I think one of them, as far as I understand, is that the bots are less than 5%. And that is the whole point of contention now. And I think Elon is sort of pushing Twitter team to a corner. And as you can see, Elon being Elon, he's certainly very savvy in terms of using Twitter as a platform to do that, also making Parag react to it. So clearly, it seems to be a tactic that he's employing to sort of figure out a way to do a bit of a price negotiation. Now, how this will unfold is a tough one to say because legally, the premise is not very strong for Elon. Having said that, if this goes for litigation, it is not going to be very good for Twitter either, right? So there is a vested interest in Twitter to reach an amicable settlement, and that could be in the form of a price reduction.
Manish, I want to understand, Elon Musk has been very, very clear with what he sees as his vision for Twitter, more transparency. He wants everybody to be verified, accounts that were banned. He wants to get them back as well. Bots, of course, has been one concern as well. What do you make of the vision that Elon Musk has for the platform in case this deal does go through?
Yeah, so my information is based on all his public tweets, which is also what everyone is reading across the world with his 94 million followers. And we don't know how many of them are fake versus real. So that's there. The only difference I can say is that I can add my own interpretation. And my read here is that he thinks about two things. One is the platform has not realized its full potential. So how do you realize that full potential? So how do we get more and more people to use it? And I think that is where he talks about free speech. That is where he talks about, growing the user base, reaching new markets, reaching new use cases, solving for things better, authenticating accounts, making it safer, making it better, right? So that's one part of it. The second part, which is very important, and I think that is also going to be very, very game changing, is that he seems to feel that the Twitter should reduce its reliance on advertising business, and start charging users, probably the commercial users and the government users, not the casual users. And that is where he has been very vocal about it. And that's going to be a very profound change for a platform like Twitter, and also for the entire industry of social media, because the entire social media industry runs on advertisement-driven revenue. Correct. And the platform is kept free for the users, all kind of users. Now, his view is very different there. And I think, in a way, if he succeeds, that would be a new way of looking at this business. And given what he has done with the other companies, with SpaceX and Tesla, clearly he is someone who can take some bold bets. And the fact that it would be a private entity would also give him the freedom and the leverage to do drastic changes that would not have been possible if this was a public company.
Manish, I have a couple of areas that I want to discuss with you, which is one, do you see users actually going forward and wanting to pay? Of course, the commercial and the government users, and what this would mean for the platform. More importantly, what this means for management currently. But before I get to all of that, this kind of back and forth, this creates a bit of instability for Twitter today itself. It is going to have concerns as far as the investors are concerned as well. How do you see this back and forth? Uh, what this means for the stability of the platform as whole?
Yeah, so it is really a tough time for Twitter as a company, right? Because it is the deal is still not done until
Yeah,
it's I think it's being the process is undergoing, and it is very destabilizing for the company and for the employees. We have already seen a lot of
yeah,
employees are leaving, and it
correct.
also means that advertisers who are advertising on the platform, they also want some stability and some clarity, and that is also missing. So it's not a uh, great period or great time for Twitter at this point in time. What they would want is that quickly it should come to a conclusion, and most likely the best outcome for Twitter is to get the deal done and
Yeah,
move forward from there. Because if the deal breaks, clearly Elon has to pay a breakaway fee, which is only about
sure.
$1 billion. But I
Hmm.
think the more difficult part there is that Twitter can press for specific performance, which is they can press Elon to acquire. But then if that goes to court, it's going to be long drawn. And I think in the long drawn battle like this, the loser would be the company, Twitter as a company, because Elon can still walk away from it and sort of, or even if he has to perform and go and buy the company,
Yeah.
uh, in the process, a lot of harm would have been done to the company. So that's where things are. Um, yeah.
I also want to understand what this means for the management. Manish, there's been a lot of back and forth with Parag openly announcing on Twitter that we want to make Elon Musk a board member, then to having to take it back, saying that Elon has refused that offer. Then we see this deal going through. There have been a bit of hurdles for that also. The minute the bone of contention of bots was put out by Elon Musk, it was almost pushing Twitter in a corner and for Parag to respond. What does this mean for the future of the Twitter CEO itself and for the stability as a group? Because within all the meetings, and I've been speaking to a lot of people, Parag can try and say that the ship is still sailing, we do have a vision, we'll try and go through, but there seems to be a big vacuum in what Elon is putting out and what Twitter is being forced to put out as well.
Yeah. So if the deal goes through, anyway, the board will get dissolved, right? I mean, so it will become a
Yeah,
private company. So
correct.
the board will get dissolved, and if Elon will become the owner of the company. So I think the management change will also happen. I also noticed somewhere that Elon said that he would want to be the CEO for some time at least. So that really means it's
As
quite
an
telling
interim
for
CEO, yeah,
as
correct.
interim CEO. So that is what
Yeah,
so that means like what will happen to Parag? That's a question. I don't want to venture a guess, but I mean people can connect the dots. The other thing I also notice is that Jack and Elon are ideologically close in my view, and Jack has been supportive of Elon acquiring. So as you know, in November, Jack was ousted from the company, I think, at the behest
yeah.
of the activist investors. So it would also mean that there could be a return of Jack in some capacity, may not be the CEO, but maybe chairman of the board or in some kind of influential capacity to handhold Elon or to work with Elon there. And
Hmm.
I think Jack has been quite earlier, but I think later on came out supporting the deal. So we have to see how that plays out. But it does mean that a lot of management change is likely. And I think already I noticed last week the head of consumer product, Kevon, and the head of revenue product, Bruce Falk, both were
Hmm.
let go by the company.
Yeah,
In a very quick and sudden move, right? I mean, Kevon was on a paternity leave, and I think during the paternity leave itself, he was asked to leave. And I think both of them publicly tweeted about it. It's very
yeah.
rare for someone to tweet about the fact that they were let go and how they were let go. So it was very juicy detail for the whole world to consume.
And
But it
with
also
one saying that it wasn't my decision, but I was asked to go.
Exactly. So typically these discussions are always closed doors and you don't talk about it. But I think the way the Twitter is, everything is out there on Twitter. Even everything that is happening inside the company is out there on Twitter. So it's a very unique time and also a great lesson in terms of how such high level boardroom drama and management changes happen, particularly with Elon driving it. I mean, Elon being Elon, I think he's
Yeah.
doing it his own style and very unapologetic, very mischievous, he has his own style of doing it and very vocal about what he believes in. And I think we can see that in his tweets every day.
Okay. Manish, I'll get to the aspect of this entire thing actually playing out on social media and what are the lessons for everybody. But before that, I want to get to the aspect that we were discussing earlier, which is that hint that Elon Musk gave that possibly commercial and government users will have to pay as far as the services on Twitter is concerned. If that does go through, how do you see that changing the dynamics of how we know Twitter today?
Yeah. So what it does mean is that it would have a new revenue line coming from businesses, commercial entities, think tanks, and maybe governments as well. And I think that would be a new revenue line for the company because these entities have been leveraging Twitter for business objectives or for their organizational goals. And I think in my mind, if they're getting benefit, they would not mind paying some money for it. What he
Hmm.
did say in his tweet was that it will remain free for casual users because that is where the user base comes from. So in my mind, it would be a win-win, right? If you're getting value and
Yeah,
you're paying for it, that's a fair and
sure.
square deal. And it will also mean more seriousness in terms of servicing them because today, if it's something is free, they don't know who to call and how to get the support. But I think once they start paying, they would know who to call and how to then get the service level, get the service they deserve for being a paid user. So my view would be that it also resolves a dichotomy that exists in the company today because there are two sets of team in the company. One set of team is trying to grow the user base and try to
Hmm.
serve the. It's more mission driven about it's more mission driven about the fact that more and more people should have access and they should have public. They should be able to
Yeah,
express themselves. And there's another set of team in the company that is servicing the advertisers. Their objective is to sell ads to make brands
correct.
and
Hmm.
also so clearly you are trying to serve two different set of customers and they
Yeah.
can be at loggerheads. But on the other hand, if the reliance on ad business goes down and you have subscription business where the user people who really use the platform pay for it, it also leads to alignment of interest and also streamlines all the conflicts in a way that everything becomes cohesive and there is one
Hmm.
single objective the whole company can go after.
Okay, Manish, two things that I want to understand from you. Now, one is, of course, this entire boardroom saga that's playing out on social media. What are the lessons for everybody to learn?
Well, I think nothing is done until it is done. So that's one thing. I think we all felt like the deal is done, but it seems like you don't know. I think if you look at the share price as well, share price, when the deal was signed, it was very close to $54. That is the price at which it was signed. But
Yeah,
yesterday it was 38 or $40. So clearly, there is a high probability the deal will not go through, and the markets are
yeah,
factoring that. So lesson number one is it's not done until it is done. Lesson number two is that there is always an alternate way to look at a business and a company. I mean, everyone thought that, okay, how would you reduce reliance on ad business? But clearly, if you look at the business plan and the pitch deck that Elon presented and he got a lot of people to co-invest with him, he
sure.
does talk about quadrupling the revenue, growing new revenue lines. So he is taking some bold moves, right? And third is, of course, right, I mean, in a time like this, you just have to empathize with the team which is at the center of the activity. I think if you look at the Twitter
Yeah,
team, there's a lot going on because on one side they have to run the business, manage the team, manage the current set of advertisers and users. At the same time, they have to also deal with the uncertainty that comes with the deal making environment. So I think it's very important to not lose sight of the fact that there are a lot of people, their livelihood, their
correct.
whole time is being spent on this. So we need to have a heart and empathy for all of them.
Manish, last question. I know
Hmm.
we started by saying that do we see the deal being renegotiated, but is there a possibility that we could see Elon Musk completely pull out because we've spoken about a lot of pressures that could be because of his vested interest with Tesla and others as well? And secondly, if this deal does go through, how do you see the platform reacting? Because till now, yes, this was a social media platform, but with certain filters, with accounts being muted and blocked. If you cross those thresholds or guidelines, once it becomes what Elon Musk continues to say, quote unquote, free platform, how do you see the dynamics changing?
Yeah, so on the issue of deal, whether it will happen or not, in my heart, I believe the deal will happen. What
Hmm.
can change is the price and the terms may change, right?
Okay.
Because the public markets have corrected, so there is a valid business reason to renegotiate the terms. But it
Sure.
seems to me that Elon, for Elon, it's a business buy, but also more importantly, it's an ideological buy, and it's a buy because he has taken on difficult industries and he has turned them upside down and made things happen, right? You look at Tesla with the whole electric
Correct.
mobility, and with
Hmm.
SpaceX with all the travel to Mars, etc. So social media and Twitter, out of all social media, is the real public square where opinions are shaped. I think it's a trophy asset that someone like Elon would want to own, and he would want to try his hand on fixing it because
Hmm.
he has been able to fix hardware problems and like the automotive and the rocket science kind of problems, but social media is a very different animal. So
Hmm.
this would really test his mettle. So that's one thing. So my view would be, at the end of the day, I think he will acquire it, but I think he will certainly get the best terms, and he will do it in a way that suits his interest. Number one. On the issue of if Elon does acquire, what happens? So clearly, it seems to me that he has much more. Uh, he has a much more freedom-oriented view on how content should be
Correct.
moderated, and he wants
Hmm.
to reduce the internal moderation that happens today in
Hmm.
the company, right? And my view there is that, yeah, I mean, he talked about the fact that what is free speech to him. He said his version of free speech is what is as per the local law, right? The challenge would come in is that how do you even implement it? Because local laws are different in every country,
Correct.
and the unique thing about Twitter is that once you tweet something, it is available globally. So what is
Sure.
okay in Germany may not be okay in France and may not be okay in UK, but maybe
Hmm.
okay in, say, Japan, right? So how do you then interpret the law in every country, and how do you then ensure that tweets are shown in line with the law of the land where they are being shown? That's number one problem. Second is, who will interpret these laws? You still need human beings to understand the law and interpret the law in the context of a tweet. And the moment you have a human being doing that, the human bias will creep in, right?
Correct.
So it is easier said than done, right? And I think a lot of things have to be figured out. But it seems to me that he will reduce internal content moderation, is the kind of
Hmm.
feelers or the indication he is giving through his public tweets.
Okay, we'll have to see. Very, very
Yeah.
interesting times ahead. Manish, we appreciate you taking out the time and joining us here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your show.